Okay guys, so on number one, we are going to get rid of the fractions by multiplying everything by the denominator of the fraction that we want to get rid of. In this case, we want to get rid of this fraction, so let's multiply everything by x minus 1. After that, we're going to cancel out, obviously, this x minus 1 with that x minus 1, and I'm going to rewrite whatever's left over. The x comes down, and if you notice, this minus 1 right here, I could multiply it with the x minus 1, nothing cancels. So I'm going to have to distribute negative 1 times x, that's a negative 1x, and negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. And of course we bring down the equal sign, and over here we also are going to distribute x times x is x squared, x times negative 1 is negative x, and it's still over the denominator 2. So we got rid of one fraction, the fraction on the left side. Now we need to get rid of the fraction on the right side. But before doing that, we see this left side, we could actually combine x take away x. If we combine x take away x, they cancel out, they're not there anymore. So I'm just going to draw some lines through it. And now I'm going to focus in on this red equation that's left over. So if I did want to get rid of this fraction, I'd have to multiply by 2 to get rid of that denominator, or that, the denominator of 2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side. So that cancels out. You end up with 2 equals x squared minus x. Now, we do have a quadratic equation. That's to the second power. So what we're going to do now is set it equal to 0. That way we could use the quadratic formula, or if we're lucky, we could factor, split, and solve. So I'm going to subtract 2. It'll cancel out. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Subtract 2. I can't really do it to anything, so I'm just going to rewrite everything. I will have x squared minus x minus 2, and the equals 0, I could put it on this side, or I could put it on the other side. I'm going to choose to put it on the other side, so let me put the equals 0 on the other side over here. And now I'm going to factor, split, and solve. So we have the parentheses set up. Let's put the x and the x, and let's think. What times what is negative 2, that if I combine together is negative 1? That's easy. That's a negative 2 times positive 1. And now that we have it factored, now we could actually split them and solve. So I'm going to take this x minus 2 and set it equal to 0. I'm going to take the x plus 1 and set it equal to 0. After that, I solve both of them. If I add 2 to both sides on that one, I'll get x equals positive 2. If I subtract 1 on both sides, I'll get x equals negative 1. So those are our answers, but we need one more final step. I need the step of plugging it back into the equation, the original one, just to make sure we don't end up with any undefined values. So I have a 2 right here. If I plug it in right here, 2 take away 1 is 1, so I'm fine. The negative 1, if I plug it in right there, it's still negative 1. Take away 1, that's negative 2, I'm fine. The only time you get extraneous solutions is when you plug it in and you end up with 0 in the denominator, because that would make it undefined. For example, if I had the answer x equals 1, okay, let's pretend that I had that. If I did plug it in right there, it would be 1 take away 1, that would be 0, that would make this undefined, okay? But that's not the case, all right? We didn't have positive 1 as an answer. I'm just saying if we did have positive 1 as an answer, it would be called extraneous because it would cause it to become undefined. Let's move on to number 2 over here. Okay, solving this one, we'd have to get rid of the fractions. And how do you get rid of a fraction? By multiplying everything, 1, 2, 3, by the denominator x plus 2. So we need to multiply everything by x plus 2. So there it is. Everything is being multiplied by x plus 2. And of course, the x plus 2 on top cancels with the x plus 2 on the bottom. What do we have left? We have just an x left over. Let's bring down the plus sign, and let's actually distribute what is x times x? Well, that'll be x squared. And then let's distribute what's x times 2? That'll be 2x. Okay, and let's bring down the equal sign. There's the equal sign. And over here on the right side, the x plus 2 cancels with the x plus 2. We don't have to distribute. Let me bring down the 5x plus 8. After this, again, we have a quadratic equation. We want to set it equal to 0, and hopefully we could factor, split, and solve. But if we can't factor, you could always fall back on the quadratic formula. So before moving anything, I notice that there's an x right here and a 2x right there. I'm going to combine this x, let me circle it, with this 2x, and that'll become 3x. So let me bring down the x squared. I have x squared, I have plus 3x, I have equals and I have 5x plus 8. Now let me get everything to one side. I want to subtract the 5x. You know what? I want to do two steps in one. I want to subtract 5x and subtract 8. And of course, I have to do that to the other side also. Subtract 5x and also subtract 8. Okay, subtract 8. So anyways, over here they cancel, so I really do end up with an equal 0 on this side. On the left side, I have the minus 8 that I couldn't combine with anything. Right here, the positive 3x and the negative 5x, that'll give me a negative 2x when I combine it. And of course, the x squared, I'm going to bring it down. So we now have a quadratic trinomial equation that could be factored. You got to simply think, what times what is negative 8, that if you combine together is negative 2. So we have an x here, we have an x over here, and that would be negative 4 times positive 2. That gives you a negative 8, and if you combine it together, it does give you a negative 2. So now we're going to split it and solve. So we're splitting it because if you have something times something and it equals 0, you could split them and set them each equal to 0. That's a zero product property, which means that if we solve these two simple equations, we're going to get two answers. X equals positive 4 and x equals negative 2. Once again, you need to take both of these answers and plug them back into the original equation and make sure you don't end up with an undefined value. So the 4, if you plug it in, is fine because 4 plus 2 is 6. 4 plus 2 is 6, but the negative 2, that will mess it up. If you plug in negative 2 right here, it's going to be negative 2 plus 2, which would be 0, which means that it's undefined. So this guy is not an answer, all right? Not an answer. That's what we call an extraneous solution. So the only answer that you need to write is x equals 4. Okay, so the only answer for number 2 is x equals 4, not negative 2. We scratch that out. Why? Because it gives us an undefined value. So that was solving equations that have rationals in there, fractions in them. Next, on the next video, we're going to be solving inequalities.